Good morning and welcome to the Courage Coalition. Today's Monday drop, I get to introduce you to another wonderful human, another person that I've got to meet by stepping out in courage, stepping out into new rooms, stepping out into new experiences, and really just saying, would you be willing? Angelina Rivera and I met 2 years ago, but very briefly. And I really didn't get to know her until this last year and know her story. And so, welcome, Angelina. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and just having the courage to ask for me to be on.
Yes, love it. So, Angelina is the founder of Refine Consulting and host of the Refine and Shine podcast. She's a time management coach. She really is someone that is dreaming of teaching and showing by example what it means to have the freedom of time. But she's more than that. She's a mom, she's a wife, she is honestly a corporate powerhouse. You've been leading corporate teams for decades
Mhm.
and stepped into that environment, not only from experience from your family, but really encourage, saying, nope, I'm going to do this too, even though it doesn't look like most people think it should. So I'm excited to just jump into this. So tell us a little bit about what got you to where you are today and why you really have stepped into courage in multiple ways throughout life, in work, but also in family.
That's such a good question. And I'm like, as you're saying that, I'm like, where do I start? I think it's important to start from the beginning because the person that you see today wasn't always the person that you see, right? And starts with how we were raised and how we grew up. So, long story short, I was the of a family of six. I was the third child, but the way that my mom had the children, for a period of time, I was the youngest, and then so I always wanted to do what the two oldest were doing, and then as she had the next three set of kids, I was kind of like the oldest, because the others, were doing their own thing, and so I've kind of played like the middle child, the oldest child, and the youngest child, and because I've always been like one of those people that was wanted to like no was not an answer for me. Like when I asked a question, it was like no. Well, why not? And it was always that I got in trouble a lot for asking a lot of questions, and it was just because my mom was so busy raising us for a period of time. She was a single mother, and she's still still single, but there was a lots of parts where she was raising us on her own. She was working full time. She was going to school to get her, her bachelor's, her teaching credentials, all of the things. So she didn't have a lot of patience. And I understand that now, but I didn't understand it that much. So she would just keep me busy. She knew that I was like, so she'd give me a book to read, even if I didn't know how to read. So by the age of 3, I was reading because it was just a way to keep me quiet. But through all of that, I would see her studying. I would see her study habits. I would see all of these things. And I also seen that she was sad. She would go out here and there with her sisters, but I just seen that like she was just working so much. Like I didn't see that she would make time for herself. And I really saw that when my great grandpa died. When he passed away, my mom collapsed on the couch. He was like a father to her. He was like a father to us. He was not like he was my great grandpa, but he was like he would take us to school. Like when she needed us to be taken to school, he would do all these things for us. And when I saw her on that couch laying down and just crying and crying, I never saw my mom show so much pain. And when I seen that, I was like, my mom is hurting and my mom is not resting, and it made me like I don't want that type of life for myself. But I was like a driver, right? I wanted to do all these things. I didn't want to have children because my sisters were having children, and I was like, I don't want to have children because I want to make sure that I'm the best auntie for these kids. I want to really work hard so that way I can like just take care of myself and all of these things, and then life happens, right? Um, and when we had our first child, I was 19 years old, and it was like okay, I was ready working a full-time job. I was also going to school, and I was like I'm doing all these things, so I tried as hard as I could to continue to go to school, to work, take care of my son. My husband worked night shift, so that we didn't have to have a babysitter that long. And it was just like that, my courage and all the things that happened. Like, I just, like, I got to grow, be stronger for my child too.
Yeah.
And it was hard though. It was really hard because my husband and I didn't know how to make a marriage work. We were both products of divorce. But we just knew that we had this son already, this child, and we had to really work hard to do what we had to do. Um, and sometimes that was only seeing each other for an hour or two, each day. And then he'd come home like maybe at midnight from his shift. And then I would have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning for my shift. And it was just that relentless drive to just keep going and going and making sure that we were doing the best for our son. And then in between there, we had a miscarriage, and that was really hard. And that was almost a breaking point for us. We didn't know how to talk about it. We kept a lot of it inside. We kind of blamed each other for it. Because there was, back then, there was nothing. I mean, this is like 23 years ago. There was not a lot of, the internet was fairly new. There was not a lot of places that people just didn't talk about, like the loss of a child. They didn't talk about the miscarriages and stuff. And I was pretty far along. I was actually 20 weeks, almost 21 weeks when I lost. So I had this baby within me for 5 months. Um, but we didn't really talk about it, and I kept quiet. I didn't. I did what I knew what to do. I went and just kept pushing. I kept pushing. I was out for a week for work, went back in until and I would work. I'd take care of my son. I'd work, go to school, take care of my son. Work, go to school, take care of my son. Barely spoke to my spouse because we were still on this crazy shift. And then I collapsed at work. I collapsed at work. I had to be taken by ambulance. Um, and nobody could pick me up, right? I couldn't get picked up. My husband couldn't get off the shift he was working. I couldn't get, and we were about an hour and a half away from, I worked an hour and a half from where we lived. And I had a stick shift car. Most people didn't know how to drive stick shift. Nobody in my family, I was like one of the first females in my family that knew how to drive stick shift. So I had to have a friend of a friend of, like, my mom figured it out, that she got somebody to come pick me up, and then drive my car home. And then I just like realized, like, I'm not taking care of myself. I am burnt out. And the whole flashback, I'd be a little emotional.
Yeah.
Um, the whole flashback that I see myself collapse, I just had this vision right now of just seeing my mom the same way,
I
like
was
when
gonna
she was
say,
laying on the
yeah.
couch.
That's exactly what was coming to me is that you were duplicating what you promised yourself to not duplicate. And the power of that, the tragedy of that, the trauma of that had to have been really like a blow to your face.
hmm It was like, what are you doing? Why are you pushing so hard? And the reason I think I pushed so hard is, like, I grew up in the product. I mean, I was born in the projects, which is a very low income housing, the lowest you can get. We would have government cheese. We'd wait in line at the church to get the government cheese, the peanut butter, the bread, all of those things. And I didn't want that for myself or my children. And it wasn't because there's nothing wrong with that. It was just like, I really feel like I was really smart and that I could do all these things. The sad thing is, here I am now, in right now, because of the way that life is, I'm in a government shutdown. My main source of income is gone, and it's like, makes you humble again, and makes you like, okay, we can get through this. And I'm like, I remember what we used to make as children that would really spread the meals really far, and so we're going to do those for the next couple of weeks, and we are, and we're having fun doing it. But
Yeah.
it's just like, I think those are, I kind of forgot where you asked the question, but this is kind
Hey.
of just how the story's going. um but later in life, we got through that, and like I said, it was hard. That really was hard. And then,
So, Angela, I want to stop you for just a second.
okay,
So, as you're coming through this time in life, okay, and you know now what you didn't know then, do you feel like that disconnect, that the trauma that was never dealt with, just push it under the rug? Let's not talk about it. Let's not deal with it. I'm just going to go back to work. And then you have this medical breakdown. And so there's all these things that you know in your heart, but I'm going to assume that you really didn't talk about them yet. You really just came back in and did the best you could until the next thing. Do you feel like today, before we drop into everything that we're going to talk about, that looking back, you know that that was a part of the unraveling of your
yeah,
family?
yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what do you know today? Because now you guys are going through another hard time, and it would be really easy to fall back into past behaviors, right? But
Hmm.
you've worked through them. What is like sitting in this emotion, sitting in this feeling, sitting in this knowing, and that remembrance of what happened? What today do you know without a doubt you will never break that promise to yourself again? What promise will you never break to yourself again?
Well, for me, it's the communication.
I
It's
love
the
that.
communication. It is like my husband and I communicate the finances. We communicate, because we had another issue when my husband got sick, which we haven't gotten into yet, but where we again lost, a lot of stuff, and so it's that communication. It's that, like, these are the finances. This is what we have. This is what's going on. Taking the time, like, to talk to each other. Like when a couple of days ago, I had gotten some news about a client decided not to work with me, and I was just like having that time where just to talk to my husband and say, hey, I just want to talk to you about it, and have not having a judgment zone, like just
Yeah.
listening and encouraging, because as we're always doing that, or not, maybe not everybody, but my husband does have a mental health issues, a disability. And so I found that there was times when I was always just there to listen and encourage him. But then I was like, wait, you got to listen and encourage me just as much, because we are a team together. And we have worked that. And we talk every morning. We talk every, night. We talk throughout the day, obviously, too. But just to be that sounding board, too. And
Yeah.
not to say, not to yell, not to do that, but just to say, like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. What do you think? Or, not to, but I let him let me talk, and then I say, what do you think I should do? And I say, I just want to, opinion, but doesn't mean I'm always going to do it that way.
Yeah.
I just want a feedback, and then he'll find motivational quotes, and like he knows when I'm dealing with pain in that day, he'll like send me motivational quotes or just different things that he finds, because he knows that helps encourage me. Like, you got to find that, like, that language that you guys can communicate on to help each other.
I love that, and we're going to come back to this because I think this is exactly where I want to when I want to go in the end. But the the story is broken because we've come through this part, but in the next 10 years, you guys go through a lot more, and your husband is diagnosed with a mental health disease,
Mm-hmm.
a chronic mental health condition, and so let's kind of jump forward so we can begin to see why you guys are where you're at and how it has come to be. Because one of the beliefs that I feel is that, one, we don't talk about mental health enough at all, but two, we also, when you are a spouse of someone with a chronic mental health condition, what I have seen or what I keep hearing over and over again is that, and what I have experienced personally is, you know what, just don't talk about it, because what if it puts them in a slump? What if it creates the trajectory of um, things not working again? What if, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
what we typically do is just push down our own needs, push down our own emotions, push down our own things. And what I've realized after 30 years is that is actually the most detrimental thing I can do to my husband.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of go back and let's talk about, you've had a miscarriage, you've collapsed at work, you don't really talk to your husband, you're not seeing your husband because you guys are working completely different shifts. We've, so many people have done this and been there and understand that feeling. What is the breaking point in your guys' life that kind of creates that next step for you?
I wouldn't say it was, so the breaking point after that happened. Shortly after, my husband got laid off, and then it was better. It got a little bit better, and the reason is, well, I had gotten pregnant again about 6 months later, and right when I was about to have my daughter, he had gotten laid off, and we were in the middle of buying a house. Um, but even though it could have been a detrimental, like, we're losing this income, when we figured out what we were going to be spending on childcare, what we were going to be doing, all these things, it like was perfect, because then I actually qualified for more financial aid to go for school, so we weren't so stressed out on me going to school still. And he actually started going to school for a little bit too, and then he was able to be home with the children, and that really helped a lot. But again, we weren't. with the communication still wasn't as good as it should be. And so, we had this great life, or so to speak. And then, my husband started working again, and really a hard job, mechanical work, working for the Marine Corps. Um, and it was just, there was a bunch of stuff that started to trigger him. Sounds, all kinds of things that were triggering him. And I just didn't know what it was. And he started to get anxiety attacks. And one of the things that I was just trying to fix everything, right? And I was just like, okay, you need to maybe watch your caffeine or do this or do that, and started to try to be a mother instead of a wife.
Mm.
Um, and then when stuff started to, finally, when we got some diagnosis and stuff, and they put him in a disability, he got medical disability retirement. Um, that was still not easy. Uh, and I was, because you, all of a sudden, your whole income goes away. They actually put him off for work for 6 months, and then it was almost a year later that he got the retirement. So we were like kind of lost our income. And so I'm here trying to do everything. He was taking care of the kids though, and so that kind of helped. But then, you know, it was still hard, and what changed everything is I had to actually move out of the house with the children. I had to move out of the house with the children because I felt like I was being too much of a mother. I felt that the treatments weren't always working right, because I wouldn't, like, he would miss a doctor's appointment but not tell me when the doctor's appointment was, or just things like that. So we have totally shifted the way things are now, where we have, went started he used to medicate, help treat his mental health issues. One, he had medications, but he also then would drink. He would drink alcohol, and now he's 11 years sober. So me moving out of the house with the children, we ended up letting go of our house, which was, like, it's like we would have been done paying for our house, but whatever, it's just a property. Things are just things. And so we when we left, me and the children left, he took him a little bit, but then he realized he needed to get help. And he ended up getting help on his own, actually. He had been to rehab a few times, but this time he found a routine that worked for him, started working out. In fact, when he was with his mental health, what I think one thing that helped me get through it is, one of the things we don't do is self-care. We don't take care of ourselves. We're too busy taking care of everything. And when I felt like I was going to be on another meltdown, I started running. I started running with one of the dogs, and then started just to kind of use that as a way. I started working out. I started going to the gym. I started using some time for me. And that really helped give me the strength to know that everything's not on me. I can't repair the things that have happened in the past. I can't repair things that I wasn't aware of. Like, I can only take care of now, the future. We can't change the past. Right. And when me and the children moved out, it took him a little bit, but what him and I started to do was go to church together. We would meet up, we'd go to church together. And I never took him away from the kids. What I would do is like, hey, because you need to get help, but you can be with the kids from this time to this time. But when I come home, I don't want us to argue. I don't want us to fight. So you need to be out of the house by that time. And that's what we did for a little bit. And then he was like, hey, could we go to church together? Like, he knew that I was going to church, so he started going to church with me. Like, we'd use it as a date night, we started to do what we should have did a long time ago, was take that time to spend time together, take time to start talking. We went to counseling together. We did a lot of those things. And so it was, once we got the right help for not only myself going to therapy individually, we had, him going to therapy, and then also I would start making time, like, tell me when your doctor's appointments are. Let's put them on a calendar. We started doing a shared calendar, putting all these appointments on the calendar so that I could support him just as much as he needed to support me. And that was better. Started documenting when I would see that there was things that would come up, making sure that the medication, what medication he needed to take, understanding the medication, doing the research. A lot of times we don't research what's really wrong. Like, when we get a diagnosis, I had to research, what is this about? I started reading about it, just researching, because I had the tools to research now, right? Internet's bigger. There's books out there. Barnes and Noble, I would sit there and get a book. All of these things is just taking that time to educate myself. And that really helped.
So I one of the things I love that you're bringing up is that one, it's like you guys got to the point where the unmanageable was what was going to happen because it was what your family needed, and taking that step to say, you know what, no, this isn't going to happen. And you didn't just say, no, we're getting a divorce. You said, no, we are taking some time apart to figure out if we can make this work.
Mm-hmm.
But two, it's really that it's when he began doing some of the work, his internal work, one of the key components is connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Connection to each other. And then, but what I hear you saying is that you were doing a lot of the work. How do you feel like, or when did you feel like maybe empowering your husband to be able to do some of the work, right? Empowering him to do the research, do those things would enable him to feel, because this is one of the things that I'm hearing you say is that there's these things that keep getting taken, right? And so we don't feel empowered to make change because all that keeps happening is my job is taken, and everyone's like, oh, it's just a job. Well, it's an identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's our purpose to support our family, right? And then it's my mental health, and then it's my family, and then it's this, and then it's this. And so there's literally nothing that's helping guide us back to a more whole individual, an I statement. I am strong. I am capable. I am this thing. So do you feel like there was a time that you were able to get him to really take ownership, not only of his sobriety, but his mental health?
Yeah.
And how did that look, and how did that change for you guys?
Well, some of the things that he used to help him with his sobriety is if right when he would wake up in the morning, he would drink water, lots of water. He would drink lots of water every time he wanted to grab a beer, or he would do push-ups or something like that. So he started to work on when he started to love himself by working on himself, it made it a lot more. It made it better. And then slowly looking at all the medications, what were these medications making me feel? He started to like, okay, when I take this medication, it actually makes me worse,
Mm-hmm.
and started to talk to the doctors about those things. Um, Started documentation, like things like that, because as he started to educate himself, because he didn't want to lose his family, and two, he just wanted to feel better. And once he started to do all these things, he felt it was like a mental, like he still has triggers, he still has the disability, but it made him feel like, okay, this is, I can't change the past, I can't change anything, but I can change the future. I can change my thought process, I can stop thinking negative. I can't think of, whoa, all this is happening to me, what's next, what else is going to be taken away from. It really shifted everything. And I think that a big part of that was the going to the church. We would start working out together. We started to do all of those things, and one of the things is he had to find an outlet, a positive outlet, and that was remote control cars. um,
Okay.
because his career got taken away. Like he couldn't be, he was a mechanic, and his career gets taken away from him. So what can he do? He started to do these. He had always messed around with remote control cars, but what flipped was one day we had all moved back together. We already had been living back together again and working on these things. But my dad had a remote control car, and he said, "Hey, the engine seized. You can have this one, but this is seized. Here's for parts." And my husband's like, "Nah, the engine's not seized. I'm gonna fix it." He stayed up all night working on this remote control car, and he got it to work. And my dad's like, "I've had everybody work on it," and it gave him this, like, you can still use the gift that God gave you.
Yeah.
You can still use it. And now today he has been working on remote control cars, helping others, guiding people. And we now belong to an organization that actually helps people with their mental health, veterans specifically, or first responders. We are ambassadors for this organization, and we get to make those connections. He's in a local, we're a local ambassador, so we create events for local people, veterans that are in the area that want to see what the organization's about. So it's those meetups, those one-on-one connections with people, having him have friends that are, because when you lose your job, you lose, like, Nobody talks to you anymore from your old job or anything like that. He's not on the social media. He is only on Instagram, so he wasn't on social media. He actually realized that Facebook was hurting him. So he had to like limit himself on that. And so he totally deleted it. And he just focuses on the remote control cars. And, when he uses his social media. And that just really changed. It wasn't, comparisons or, any of those things. It was like having something to focus on, having something to do. But people would contact him, how do you do this? How do you do that? So then he felt like he was still helping in another capacity.
I love that this circus circling around like this, because one of the questions I had, and something we didn't bring up, is that before your husband was retired early for disability, you talked about how in his job he was having these triggers to noise. So was your husband prior to this diagnosed with PTSD? No. Do you feel like he had PTSD?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did he, and I'm assuming he spent time in the military. Is that correct or no?
No, no, no.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
What do you feel like, I mean, without going too deep, do you feel like the PTSD was a circumstance of childhood, something later in life? What do you feel like, as you guys have communicated some of this, information and talked about the different things that it came from? Because I think also one of the things that what do I want to say? We underrate is that PTSD isn't necessarily from something really big, but it can affect you just as dramatically.
Yeah. So I actually know a few of the reasons why he has PTSD. We've talked about it. Some of the things that he has seen, and so that's like, we'll just say that, not, and I don't, it's his story, so I won't say it, but the sound of an ambulance. So we'd have a crane at work, and it would make the sound that's similar to the sound of an ambulance, and that would trigger it.
Okay.
So there were certain things like that, the sounds, and then you have to wear these ear what's it called, earplugs, because of safety reasons, and then so you can't really hear when people are coming up to you and things like that, and so that was kind of always, and he always worked underneath the vehicle. So that was some of the things that he would just get like kind of like scared about, or like it would trigger, like if somebody approached him, he was just like it was things like that. And so those are the things. And we've had these deep conversations. We've had the deep conversations. In fact, there's some stuff that not just recently I had been finding out that had happened, because there's a lot of things. It's like peeling the onion, right? There's a lot of layers to unfold. And we really didn't, like, we didn't really talk about our childhood a lot, or I would listen to him, and then he's hearing the things that I've went through now. And we've been together for almost 30 years. So there's a lot of things, and it's like, okay. And like, another thing that we didn't do is we never told our children like the kind of life that we had as children. And so we were always trying to pour into them, and when I say pour into them, making sure that they had the things that they needed. And now, like, my son and I had a conversation the other day, and he goes, "Mom, I never knew that you had how hard things were for you." And it's like, I didn't want you to know that as a child. I didn't want you to. He's like, but I think I would have understood, because we were talking about, and my husband's part of the conversation to now, is like, if we would have known our children, like back in when we were growing up, if we were friends with our children, would we think they were rich or not, or well off? And we would have been like, yeah, they were pretty wealthy. And it's just like, and my son's like, well, really? And I was like, we started going through, and he goes, no, I am. And it actually made him look at things and like, you guys did really take care of us as much as, best we could. Like, we weren't perfect parents. I'm not saying that, nobody's perfect, but we did the best that we could with what we had.
Right. When you kind of came into him finding the remote controls as a way to really direct his passion, his purpose, right? Because that's what he had done as a career. But the fact that you brought it back into the community, and I'm going somewhere with this. I didn't just go from children to this, but I want to go there with this. But bringing it back into the community, because when we fill ourselves up, when we give back, when we create service as part of our lives, we actually find more purpose. When we direct our lives in just like go to work, earn the money, come home, spend the money, go home, all the things, the thought process is, what are we doing to leave a legacy? What are we doing to create change? What are we doing to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And when I talk about that, the reason I'm bringing that up is that your husband found these remote control cars, which seem very insignificant. Let's be honest, you guys. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's a remote control car. But he brought it into a community of people, veterans, first responders, that have the same triggers that he has. So he can all of a sudden see himself and understand that this helped him. And
Mm-hmm.
it, so in turn, maybe it'll help these other people that are giving their lives for our country and for our freedoms and for our safety in a way that can get them to begin their journey, right? Process their journey. And then in turn is leaving this legacy. And you guys, I use the word legacy. I know legacy is as simple as you make it. Legacy is not this huge thing. It is, how do people remember you? It's about all five of our foundations: our physical, our mental, our spiritual, our relational, and our financial. And I think Angelina's brought all of this up in this story, right? It's the meaning behind our money, the connection we have with the relationships in our world, spiritual, how our spiritual relationship is, and then physical and mental. Every single one of these things are brought up, which is a part of our legacy. And so when you just talked about not talking to your children about it, not having those hard conversations with our kids, we are actually robbing them of the legacy that they are entitled to. And when I say that, what I mean is that they're entitled to the legacy of understanding that change is possible. That just because it's the way it's always been doesn't mean it's the way it always has to be. So let's talk a little bit more about this organization you guys are a part of and what it really does and brings. Because I was having a conversation with you last month, and you said it was like the biggest gathering right in the state of California or something. So let's talk a little bit about what happens at these gatherings and what you have found that's really just kind of filled you up.
Okay. So the organization is called Operation 11 Charlie, and the founder of it, he was dealing a lot with PTSD, lots of things. He's an Army veteran, served in the Iraqi War, and the funny thing is, as though I said social media is something that my husband does not use, he started to use YouTube as well, and would get into these chats, would see people showing about their RC cars, and there was somebody that they had that they both found. It was a guy who had, I forget what his name was, but at the top of my head, but he had cancer. And anyway, he ended up eventually passing, but my husband, through the chats, was able to meet Javier, who's the founder of this organization. And they started talking, and then Javier founded Operation 11 Charlie. And what this organization does, it's a nonprofit organization. And like I said, it helps provide, so if there's a veteran who is dealing with mental health, there's an induction, like it's the whole process that they go through. But once we get to know them, like my husband will, if there's somebody local here, we'll set up a few gatherings, which is just small, like one-on-one. Maybe if there's 5 of us, we meet up with them. We see if they're really into the hobby. We kind of get to know them, get to know their families, because it's not just you. It's just it's the families involved as well. If they want to be the wives, we highly encourage it. But then we go out there. We'll set up a spot where we can go crawl, RC crawl, get to know them, and then we eventually, if they work out, we will induct them into we'll put up like kind of a bigger ceremony where we give them, maybe they get an RC car, and like a bag and all the things to work to have the car so that they can drive it. So when my husband first met Javier, we first met him in person. So we have, it's called Proline by the Fire. It's this big RC event that's in Southern California every year. In 2021, they didn't have it in 2020 because of the pandemic. In 2021, it was the first time that my husband and Javier got to meet up. We weren't part of this organization yet, but my husband was always, they have a Monday Night Live. My husband was always on there. So we go out there early and we get to meet Javier. My husband's like, come over, we're going to meet Javier. I thought that they, like, the way that they hugged and embraced, it was like they were It gives me chills. It was like they were like long lost brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cool to get to we met them. They were they fundraised and they were doing their own stuff at the event. I didn't stay at the whole event, um, but the next year they contacted me through social media, and they're like, hey, we really want to induct your husband. He's on every single live. He's always helping out. And so they had that. So the next year when they had the big event, um, my husband was inducted, and it was such an emotional thing, because my husband he didn't get the formal retirement ceremony. He didn't get all the things that he worked really hard for. And that was a time, sorry,
No.
that he was appreciated for something, because he was always helping people out in the chat. He was always like, they would contact him for advice. He was always there. And it was just to show him appreciation for all the things. And from there, it's really grown, because we now hold our own little events, where we meet up with people. And then last year, I finally got inducted. Not finally, but I did get inducted, and I never asked to be, but it was really fun, because what I started to do once my husband got inducted, I started helping out with the events. Like I started like running the booths when they would do an event, um, all of like if we were selling things at the big event, and it was just they became a family of ours. Um, and then so it's been really fun. And so just recently we had the Pro Line by the Fire, which is a big RC event, and then we do our event. We had 30 veterans. We had 30 veterans, our first responders. We help with first responders as well. There that we got to hang out. We got to induct two Vietnam vets.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yes. And so it's just like we do raffles, we do, fundraising and all these things, so that we can give back to these veterans, so we, our first responders, that we can give them an RC car, or we can travel, so that we can have, like, maybe they don't, we just having travel funds to just have meetups. So those are the things that we do. And it's the family, like the ladies, it's like being able to have that, I've developed some of my best friends are the wives of these husbands. And my husband's like, the other day I was talking to one of the wives. He's like, oh my gosh, you talk to her all the time. I'm like, I know, it's so fun. But it's
You
just
know,
because we can relate with each other.
yeah. And I think what I want to ask you is that in these connections and these relationships you've made with the wives, um, what what do you hear that this somewhat very simple task, simple project, simple pastime has given these people back?
It's given them their lives back.
Why do you say that though? Like what do you mean when you say it
Be-
gives them their lives back?
because when they are in their pain, they're in their head. Some of these people have lots of stuff that you can't see, a mental disability you can't see. People look at you and you think you're fine. They don't understand what's going through your head. Some of them have medical pain, back pain, things like that. And when you have a remote control car, you can be in a wheelchair and you can still control it. But it's given them something an activity to do. So you're not staring, thinking about everything else that's going wrong. You're not on your device, your phones, comparing yourself to others or any of the other things, the rabbit holes that you can go through. And you have a community, you have
Community.
brothers, you have
Yeah.
that, or, brothers and sisters, people that you can talk to. Um, my husband, in the chats that they're in, or the talks that they have, like, they talk to each other about everything.
Yeah.
They talk to each other if their car is broken, like their regular car, or just jokes, or just little things like that. Like they call each other brother. They, men do not normally hug. You don't normally see men hug. When they see each other, they hug each other.
Yeah. I
They
love that.
have that camaraderie. We, if there's one of them's down, they could talk about it. They have that small inner relationship that a lot of times is not available. It's not available. They have to, and they, like I said, social media is, there's some bad things, but with this one, they have the chat that they can talk to, keep up with each other, and just talk.
Yeah.
When one's quiet, they check up on you. What's going
Yeah.
on? Tell me about it. What's
Well, it comes back down to the connection. When we build rooms, and I say rooms lightly, but when we build spaces, containers of connection and similarities, not not a likeness. No, I don't want you to be, it's not necessarily about being exactly like somebody else. It's just similarities that bring you together. And in this situation, it is about pain bringing together, right? There's pain, mental pain, physical pain, doesn't matter, life pain, coming together and then redirecting it in a way that supports and builds each other up. And that is true success. That is true legacy. And so I love the story. I love how it has come. And you know what I even love more is that you have you have supported your husband by being a part of a community that means something to him. It's easy for ourselves, I think, to, oh, well, that's your thing and that's your thing. But a lot of times when we come together in one consistent place is when our relationship and our connection grows even more, right? Because it gives us that ability to really see each other and feel each other in those situations. And for I'm going to say this in this is just my opinion, but I think in a lot of situations in mental health is because you're not seen. You're not seen, whether that be for the struggles or the hardship and the hardships, or for the successes and the celebrations. You're just not seen. And it's easy to dive deeper and deeper into that hole when we don't feel seen or understood.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I would say that that's exactly correct. And I get, there would be some, like, we were at an event representing this organization a couple years ago, and it was for autism awareness. And we went out there to support. It was going to be the last year that this event went on because one of the founders had passed away. So in this community, it's not, we have met other communities, right? And there was a child there, or it was a young adult, I'd say probably 18 to 20 years old, and his truck wasn't working. And when I saw my husband, reached out. He couldn't speak. He was nonverbal. When I saw my husband helping him, it gave me, like, I actually recorded a little bit of it, and my husband's like, "Oh my gosh!" And even another wife that was from another organization, she was like, "Look at your husband helping him," like, because she knows the background, and she's like, "Look at the joy that he's just making that young man smile, just for fixing his remote control truck." And that individual was so happy. And it's that kind of thing. It's that kind of, like, being able to help people where you can, meeting them where you can, because and he had a hard time walking away from what he loved to do. He was supporting the warfighter. He was fixing vehicles that were out there to be safe, and that was a hard thing. And I didn't understand it at first, and then the depression that set in until a little bit later. And now I see that he's not at, don't get me wrong, there'll still be bad days, and he has learned the tools, like, let's go out and have some sunshine. And even if I'm having a bad day, I'm sitting at my desk for a long time, he's like, he comes out and goes, time's up, get outside.
Yeah.
And it'll make me walk outside. And I think that that's important, is that bond that you have, and you understanding where we need to be at. It takes some time. Like, here we are 30 years later, we're still learning. But I think it's important that you don't give up. And I'm saying that I'm not saying that if there's other things that are bad in your relationship, and I'm not saying don't get divorced or anything. I'm saying that you can work through things, a lot of things that you never thought you could, if you just have faith, you pray, you talk about it, you have that communication. I think that's so important. I mean, we are going through healing constantly. It's not linear. There's going to be setbacks, but then there's going to be amazing breakthroughs as well.
Well, I think it comes back to the simple thought process that life is not easy, but it's simple, right? There's such a big difference between easy and simple. And if we go back to what we know in our hearts, communication, relationships, whether that's with God or with your spouse or with whatever it is, like that connection. Remember, as human beings, we will die without relationships, without connection. It is actually how we were born to thrive in this world. So I want to, at every guest that I have on the show, I ask, what does courage mean to you? And so I'm going to read that. It says, what is a moment in life where you felt courage has really showed up for you? And you said, so many times, from having to leave my husband during time when life was hard for him to get the help he needed, leaving a job because it was uncomfortable. And you said, to you, courage is having faith, that deep, unshakable knowing that no matter what comes my way, God's got me. One of my favorite verses says it perfectly: be still and know that I am God. So I love that you wrote that and put scripture as a part of your courage statement. So as we wrap up, I would like you to share with the listeners how to find you. Where would you like, whether that's the organization you guys are a part of or you personally, how would you like to support listeners in the conversation that we've had today?
Oh, I would like to give my website is angelinarivera.com. So that's where an easy way. All my social media is linked there. So I think that's the best way. And then the other thing, the organization that I'm a part of is Operation 11 Charlie. So you can go through Operation 11 Charlie. I don't remember. We just changed it. I don't remember if it's .org or .com. I think it's operation11charlie.com. But you can find us on there as well. You actually will see some pictures of my husband and I and some of the events that we've been through. But that's a really good way to find us as well.
Okay. And I will drop both those links in the show notes. So, and I'll go on and find out if it's .com or .org and drop that, because, I just believe that we are truly born to serve others. And when we can find that place that we feel like we are doing that in a way that aligns with who we are, it changes everything about our lives. It changes everything about our lives. And that's in personal lives and that's in business. I truly believe that value-driven businesses are the most successful businesses in the world. So, Angelina, I cannot thank you enough for being here today and really sharing your story and your support and your courage with regards to mental health, but also just moving through the hard, right? Like the whole process of is that life is not easy, but it is pretty simple if we break it down. So thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.